Good morning again to everyone. Good morning, Chair, board members, staff, and members of the public. In order to minimize background interference and as a courtesy to your colleagues, as usual, please silence all cell phones and other electronic devices and mute all microphones and speakers unless you're speaking. Because this is a remote meeting, I will do a formal roll call. Please respond yes or here. Chair Russ,
Here.
Member Adams,
Here.
Member Gavin,
Here.
Member Gawold.
Here, thank you.
Okay, I note for the record that Member Gonzalez is having some connectivity issues. I will note his presence once he signs on. I note also for the record that Member Austin is not attending today's meeting and that the Chief Operating Officer is also not attending today's meeting. Thank you. And Chair, there are no members of the public who registered as required in order to provide comments. As such, we will proceed with the regular calendar. The first order of business is to adopt the minutes of the prior board meeting of Monday, November 29th, 2021. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Paula Gavin.
Thank you, Gavin. Seconded by?
Second, Adams.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
None opposed. Thank you so much. Chair, before we proceed to the reports item on the agenda, do you wish to provide any comments?
I will do just a brief couple of comments. We continue to keep a careful eye on what's happening in Washington with respect to the Build Back Better bill. Do not have any news to share with the board on the timing of that. We do know that the Senate was thinking of trying to get to a vote before the holiday. It's unclear if they're going to be able to make that timetable or not. The second thing, I think most of the board members know that the HUD secretary was in town and she visited Betances and Patterson. It was intended to be a smaller visit in the sense that we had Congressman Torres with us, but we had the minimum number of people so that she could actually get a feel for the units. She went into several units at Betances, which is a RAD site, and then we went a few blocks away to Patterson. Patterson, interestingly, is one of the properties of highest physical need, which has a 2017 number of 402 million, but I would venture that it's probably up to around 420 million of investment or more just at that site alone. So we had a chance to talk briefly one-on-one and conveyed, the collaboration that we've had with HUD under the agreement, but also a sense of things that we're going to need to do together, particularly on the funding and some other issues around both the capital and operating budgets. We had a resident roundtable at Patterson, which was really a listening session. Legal aid was there and some of their clients, and they spoke about all the operational difficulties many of you are familiar with, many of the staff are familiar with. And she listened, and I'm having a follow-up conversation with her office, I think next week. So those are, it was an encouraging visit. It was great to meet her in person. I had talked to her via Zoom at some of the industry meetings, but this was great. And the last thing I'll say, we're going to be briefing the board shortly on the fiscal year 2022 budget. This is one of the hardest budgets we've ever had to manage. We think we've come up with a package of approaches that are pretty solid. It doesn't fund everything that needs to be funded, but we'll walk through the logic of it with the board. But it was a hard year. I think, and you'll see from the presentation, especially since we're really our rental collection numbers are way down. So that'll be coming at the board briefings, and then at the second meeting on the 29th, I think, we will be bringing the budget to the board. So that's a quick update.
Thank you, Chair. And I'm noting for the official record that Vice Chair Gonzalez has joined us and will be marked present for this board meeting. Thank you. And we'll now proceed to the reports item on the agenda. Eva Trimble, EVP for Strategy and Innovation, and Arvind Sohoni, VP for Strategy and Innovation, will be co-presenting a transformation plan implementation update. Eva and Arvind.
Thank you very much. Good morning, board members. We're here today to give you an update on the transformation plan and our implementation of some of our bigger initiatives. Our goal here is to continue our efforts to be as transparent as possible with the progress of the transformation plan and the different projects within, so that you are as informed as you can be on our work here on the transformation plan. So our agenda for this brief presentation will be an overall transformation update, and then a focus a little bit on the neighborhood model, work order reform, and janitorial reforms, which are three of the bigger projects proceeding right now. So with that, I will hand it over to Arvind to take us through the neighborhood model.
Thanks, Eva. Morning, everyone. Arvind Sohoni, Vice President of Strategy and Operations. I want to start by spending a few minutes on the neighborhood model, because it really is sort of the structural underpinning of a lot of the work in the transformation. So a lot of the programs we have going on all tie together through this sort of new structure. So we've been searching for a visual to try and capture it all in one page. This is not perfect. We're going to try it out, but it's our sort of best attempt to try and put this all in one screen. Despite the name, the actual center of the neighborhood model is the development, right? And so all this transformation work is around making the development the node of activity, right? This is where most of our services are delivered, most of our work with residents is performed. So the question becomes, how do we think about the rest of the agency in relationship to a development, all right? So the artistry here is, how do you think about the way that IT relates to development, or the way that waste management relates to development, or compliance, or intergov, or any department or function here? How do we think about it through the lens of it going to a development and actually impacting a resident's life? That's the core question here. We've bucketed the agency's functions into a couple different groups that I'll explain quickly. You'll see the middle, kind of this core vertical, is property management, the development being the bulk of it, with the neighborhood and borough sitting on top. On the left side, we're calling service providers. So this is the elevator team, heating, ESD, OMAR, waste, a lot of the operations groups that are outside property management, but still perform functions on site. The distinction here is these groups, in theory, we don't do this all the time, you could charge your activities to a development budget, right? In the future, that could be a thing that's possible, because it is sort of a discrete activity that you could exchange fees for a service. On the right side, the enabling functions, these are mostly central office pieces, right? So IT, law, finance, PTAD, other things like that. A little bit harder to charge one-to-one to development. So usually a management fee is what's captured from a development to fund those things. And again, no matter what we're calling these things, the actual work that's being done on the model is defining, how do these functions work with the development, right? How do they actually work together to deliver services to residents on a day-to-day basis? So let's go to the next slide. We wanted to show how the major transformation projects align to this chart. And again, we've bucketed them by kind of who's leading the activity. A lot of these things still do require work from across the agency, right? So the pillar work, for example, on elevators also does rely on some property management staff, right? Part of the elevator action plan was to have caretakers sweeping door tracks for elevators. So none of these things happen just within one department. We wanted to show sort of who's leading each one of these pieces. So you'll see the pillars, annual reviews on the left side, the asset information management system on the left side. And if you have questions or want more info on any specific piece of this that we didn't get into today, so we're happy to do that either on this call or at a different point in time too. Within property management, neighborhood model, we're going to talk about work order reform and janitorial reform in more detail in a second, closed work tickets. Then also importantly, a lot of work going on the right side in the central office functions too, around borough admin teams, human capital management, lease enforcement, data governance, and NYCHA, the resident roundtable, which is informing a lot of our work, and a lot of work on budgeting. Again, there's a lot of work happening across the agency, a lot of very good work that is cross-functional, has a lot of resident input. So we're really changing the way we run these programs from the sort of the methods of the past. Let's go to the next slide. So in terms of where we are on all of these different programs, you'll see that we're at the moment, we're in the midst of almost all of them, right? Almost all of these pieces are somewhere in flight. A couple things have wrapped up. You'll see the annual research changes, I think we presented to the board maybe almost a year ago, has been implemented and is now getting still rave reviews from residents. But most of the programs are still in flight. We still have working groups working on these things, refining them, implementing them. So again, a lot of work being done by a lot of different departments within the agency. The work's going to continue into next year. Many of these things will run past next year. But there's a lot of really exciting milestones in the next 12 months that I think we're going to, I think residents and staff both will be excited to see. Let's go to the next slide. And then just one more quick note on timing specific to the neighborhood model. Our plan is to roll out a sort of a first pass at roles and responsibilities early next year. So this is going to be redefining the role of the property manager, the neighborhood administrator, borough vice presidents, and a start at that relationship between the development and different departments. That's going to take a little bit more work to have both groups in the room talking about what it means to provide elevator repair service or IT services to development. But we want to start that thinking early next year and then sort of have additional work cascading after that around budget control, personnel control, possible looks at deconsolidating some sites, having more management offices, and then longer term looking at the possibility of more decentralization of other functions too. At the bottom of this, you're going to see the dates around work order reform. Eva's going to talk about this in a second. All these things do work together. So these programs do sort of, they coincide and they complement each other. And so you'll see that the rollout of the changes on work order management are also happening at the same time. And we're timing them in a way where we think they're going to be complementary to have the development staff be able to accommodate both and really run with those changes. So with that, I'm just going to hand it back to Eva to talk about some of the specific programs we have going on also.
Thank you, Arvind. So on the next slide, we turn to work order reform. I know we gave a deeper dive into the work order reform project at a recent meeting, but just wanted to reiterate for you all, we did launch Queens Staten Island at the end of November, which is very exciting. Again, we intend to spend about a quarter in each borough, give or take, to really make sure that borough is set up and stabilized with the new process. Each neighborhood receives a planner and a secretary dedicated to the scheduling and sequencing of work orders. So now maintenance workers, when they come to an apartment, if they have to sequence for additional skilled trades, they hand the resident a form with the skilled trades that are required. They open up all of those child work orders on the spot. And that way the resident can reach out to their neighborhood planner and secretary and schedule those work orders at their convenience, so we can make sure they understand the timing, that they're home. But most importantly, the biggest change here is that the residents and NYCHA are now seeing the process through the same lens. We're seeing everything as the full job, not what comes next in the sequence. And so we're able to communicate to the resident, there's going to be 3 more required visits for these trades. This is what it's going to take to finish your job. And this is how we're looking at the project as well. So we're working to create new performance measurements that look at the entire job from the start of the call through the completion of the project, rather than looking at each individual step along the way. So this one call project, one call system, we really think will help streamline and make the process just clearer for both employees and for residents. So this is now completely underway in Queens, Staten Island, and we're looking to launch the Bronx in January. The next slide, I think, has some information on the staffing. So for Queens, Staten Island, we hired 66 additional staff between maintenance workers and a variety of trades. We're working right now on hiring up over 130 staff for the Bronx. And this additional staff helps place those trades at the development or the neighborhood level, depending on where they're most needed by the conditions of the site. This allows us to make sure that we're planning more efficiently. There's less travel time involved for our skilled trades, more time spent at the developments completing repairs. Manhattan and Brooklyn are scheduled for later in 2022, and we're still finalizing the exact number of staff for those boroughs as part of the 2022 budget. But we do understand that there will be additional staffing in order to implement it in those two boroughs. So that's work order reform. On the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about janitorial reform. So the janitorial reform program is being piloted in Brooklyn. We are piloting at 3 sites. We picked 3 sites that have different type of typologies. So high rise, low rise, large acres, small acres, in order to make sure that the pilot is something that we can actually evaluate and use to think about how we roll out throughout the entire portfolio. The pilot involves bringing most of the caretakers back to the traditional schedule. But the biggest change with janitorial reform isn't as much about the time that the caretakers are on the site, but how they do their work. And that's a really important piece that a lot of people forget about when they talk about the change that happened with AWS. It wasn't just about the time or the shifts that people work. It was also about the way they do their work. And the most critical piece is bringing caretakers back to an assigned building. And that when you bring them back to an assigned building, you increase ownership and engagement between the caretaker and the building and the residents, and you provide accountability for NYCHA. So we know who is at that building and when, so we can actually hold our staff accountable to the performance and the cleanliness of our buildings. And that's really a key change for us. So that's what we're piloting right now. We have some, not everyone will be back on traditional. We still need early morning and late shifts for things like driving and other tasks to be performed. We're working out exactly how the supervisor shifts work within that as well. But the pilot right now has been really engaged process. We've actually had Local 237, the union, involved in this from the beginning, working with our employees, working with us to make sure that we're responding in real time as we identify things going on at those sites. So it's been a real partnership, and you'll see on the next slide why that's so critical. So the time frame for janitorial reform right now, as I said, the pilot began in late summer. We're hoping to wrap up in the end of this month, early January, and then we're gonna go back and kind of evaluate, look at all the data we've collected, and evaluate the program and come up with a proposal for a full rollout for all of NYCHA. So what would the reform look like? We're still not entirely sure. It'll have some components of the pilot, things that worked, and maybe we propose other things to address areas that didn't work. But that proposal needs to go back to the union for ratification. So as part of changing back the work schedules to traditional, we do need the union to ratify that, which is why it's been so important that they've been at the table since the beginning in this process. And so we hope to present something early spring to both senior leadership here at NYCHA as well as to the union, and in hopes of having something that we can roll out portfolio wide. I'm hopeful maybe this summer, maybe it would take till the fall, but we'll see what we can do with the scheduling, and we'll come back to you with some more updates as we move forward on this process. So I think that's the end of our presentation. The next slide just has our contact information if you have additional questions, but we're also happy to take any questions you may have right now.
Hello.
Good morning, Mr. Adams.
Hi. as I was telling Greg a while ago, I see some things that are working quite well. The first thing is the management offices, at least here and 2 more places, they have the autonomy now to hire these contractors to come in and do the work. And I bumped into plasterers and they said, well, we have tickets for you and 3 other people, but we think we need to come after 6. I said, okay, fine. That seemed the management office handling that piece of it. We had an issue with the steam system, what the HPT couldn't handle, and management had a plumber here within an hour and 15 minutes or less. So having them have that autonomy, that works. With the caretakers, I see them now a little bit more comfortable out there working in the dark because they're in teams, 2s and 3s. Because I'm out 5:30 in the morning walking and doing stuff, and I see them. I was initially at the beginning of the AWS implementation, I was seeing like sometimes women in the dark, sometimes by themselves, but all that has changed, and they seem to be quite more comfortable coming out early like that, doing the work. And like I said, the management offices also have the autonomy now to get people here instead of waiting for getting approval from somebody else. So that seems to be working on those 2 areas. Where I see and hear issues is at the borough office, that people are being put there that are kind of bumping into each other. They're not quite comfortable. They haven't really worked with people on a day-to-day basis. They've probably been in places making decisions. They're not familiar with units as opposed to regular night. There's some issues at the borough level. I'm just giving you the good and the ones that I observed that are not working. The borough level, there seem to be a lot of issues there. Now I know we're not a cruise ship, and we can't make everybody's cabin comfortable. But as far as when you're trying to get people to work, you can't make them feel like they're on the Titanic. Also, I understand that the AWS and other things were in the contract. I just think there was, in my opinion, the timing of the implementation of it was maybe not, in my opinion, not a good timing for it. But it seemed to be working now with caretakers. As far as the blowback you're probably getting from unions is that what I'm hearing is they're not actually at the very beginning of the process. I can't confirm that. Some of the employees say, they need to be in on this when the conversation starts. And I said, I don't know anything about that. That's a labor relation issue. I'm just giving you the feedback. And that's basically about it. But the stuff at the management levels, at the management offices seem to be working, except they might need maybe 1 more person to do what I just stated they've been doing well. Right now, it seems short of staff and trying to, have 1 person handle everything. But it seems to have gotten better, and you can see that there's a difference in that level. The borough offices is another story, and I won't elaborate any further. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Board Member Adams, for that feedback. And we will talk to the borough VPs too, as well as to see what they're seeing at the borough offices.
Okay.
Hi, this is Vice Chair Gonzalez. How is everybody?
Good morning, Vice Chair
Good
Gonzalez.
morning. Sorry about the snafu earlier with getting in, but everything is working fine now. I see the plan and I hear the plan and everything that you're doing to make it work. And I noticed that everything is in the form of a reactionary manner. But I'm looking at all the information you supplied, and I don't see any proactive initiative when it comes to the work tickets. So basically what I'm saying is that the old tickets are getting even older, and unless they're brought up to someone's attention, they're still going to remain, and then they're going to wind up somewhere where we don't want it to wind up at. And so I had a conversation earlier this year when we spoke about this, and I was told that there was some proactive initiatives that were going to be put in place, but I don't see any yet. unless I'm reading the information incorrectly.
Nope, you're not reading it incorrectly. We gave some highlights here. So you are right. There are some changes in a process that do enable us to go back and look at and be more proactive. So for example, when the resident calls the planner to schedule the new work orders, the planner, part of the new planner's process is also to pull up in Maximo all of the open work orders for that unit and look at everything that may be still pending and try to schedule everything. So not just what was new, you know, a new item, but if there's anything outstanding, they will look at it then as well. And so we are hoping to be able to capture some of that backlog. However, to be honest, there is a significant backlog in work orders that some of which may require capital improvements. And so for us to really reach deep into that backlog, we do need to engage, you know, hopefully with the Build Back Better and other funding sources coming, they will require more a capital approach rather than just what we can do day by day on our work orders.
Okay, so and now I'm playing the bad guy. So so it all depends on if the resident calls in. Now, there are times when the resident is so old that they're so upset that they just say, well, the hell with it. What are we doing about those very, very old tickets that the resident is, shall we say, a little upset and wants it fixed, but doesn't want to deal with all the craziness? How do we look at those old tickets that eventually wind up in the media?
Yep. So all the old tickets are still going to go through they're still going to go through the regular process. So right now, there are many tickets in waiting to schedule. And right now we have the current process is borough planners work, you know, every few, you know, they schedule, I think maybe 3 weeks out to they maximize the skilled trades work over 3 weeks. And then they keep going based on priority of the work ticket, as well as the age of the work ticket. So that's still going to happen with the neighborhood planners. So the neighborhood planners are still going to be scheduling, you know, anything that's in the waiting to schedule bucket. They're going to be responding to resident calls, looking at what's still open in the resident unit. So all of that is still going to happen. And I do want to add as well, while the initial plan is that the resident, you know, has the information from the maintenance worker to call the neighborhood planner. We do expect the neighborhood planner, because all the child work orders are going to be open, to be seeing what's open in their neighborhood and calling back the resident saying, hi, you had a maintenance worker at your unit, you know, 3 days ago, you haven't called to schedule your skilled trades. Can we schedule them now? So we do expect it to work in both directions.
Okay. All right. So again, it all depends on if the resident calls it in and is no longer frustrated and said to Hades with it. Okay, so I guess what I'm trying to say is that then we're gonna have to turn around or well, maybe not you particularly, but someone's gonna have to turn around and start checking with the management office as to problems that they had with a particular resident who finally gave up, and because they thought that their particular issue was not going to be taken care of.
Yeah, I mean, we hope that the neighborhood planners will be reaching out to those residents, encouraging
Okay.
them to schedule their work orders.
Okay. Okay. Well, listen, it's a plan, and I'll be here waiting to see how it progresses. I'm really concerned with the very old tickets that can wind up being health hazards and that kind of type of work tickets. Some of the other ones, and the other thing is, you said that when they contact the resident, and it is a very old ticket, you say that the planner will go back in time if they can, even if we may not have those records, to see how long this has been going on, and will it be given a priority, or will it just be treated like a brand new ticket?
No, that old ticket will then be scheduled. That's the idea, is that they will see everything going on in the apartment and say, oh, I know you called to schedule this plumbing job, but I see you have this old ticket for an electrical outlet. Would you
I
like me to
see.
schedule that electrician ticket now too? So that's the idea of what the planners will be doing.
Okay, okay. That's all I've got. I'll be checking in on that. All right, thank you.
Great, thanks.
Can you see me now?
Yes, we can see
Oh.
you.
Okay,
Uh,
okay.
Ms. Trimble,
Yes.
I have just one follow-up after board member Gonzalez spoke. With the addition of the things that the management office can do, like the contractors, which is working, seem to be working. What about the services for blind, disabled, deaf? Because my fiance, she does a lot of the translating, and she's had to respond, on a personal note, to help people at some developments, go and help conduct business for them. What I'm saying is that the disabled ADA, not this agency per se, but they're just seen as an invisible group. What is the plan? Because, like for instance, we have a person here who's 87, and she's being taken care of her son who is totally blind. So, what would be like some scenarios to have their tickets either read to them, responded to, having a translator for somebody that can't speak or hear? What in some of these presentations, I haven't seen any ADA some sort of mention how these are going to be handled, because these people do need someone to, when the management is trying to take care of them, they need someone to translate or to make it accessible for them to come into these places to get help. So I don't know what that is. And then in your presentation which seems to be very solid, but things can happen. Is there ever going to be any time that y'all might say this will be reviewed after 90 days or 6 months to see where we are and come back to it? Because I never see that in the presentations, none of them, to my knowledge. I'm just, and that's all the questions and feedback I have, as far as the disabled and the presentations itself, having, say, more in depth, how the term that you use, openness. So yeah.
Thank you, board member.
Transparency, yeah.
Yeah, no, those are two really great questions. I'm going to get back to you on the question of accessibility and how we currently deal with residents that need, whether it's translation or accessibility. I'm sure we have a process for it now. I'm not as familiar with that, but let me find out more and get back to you on that piece. On your second piece is, to be clear, that is the reevaluation, rethinking, and even to board member Gonzalez's point about how we look at this, that's embedded in everything we do in strategy and innovation and the way that we work. So we have weekly team meetings where we discuss progress and issues that we're seeing on our projects, and we reevaluate and we try new things. And so we work in a process that I call continuous improvement. So we're constantly presenting issues, presenting risks, and figuring out how we can make changes to the programs to address them in real time. So we don't really want to ever let anything go 60 or 90 days before we address it. So we're constantly bringing back information as a team and reevaluating it. When needed, I bring things up to the chair or COO for discussion, and we make those changes in real time. So there's a constant reevaluation and a change. If something's not working, we discuss whether it needs more time or whether it needs more resources or whether it needs a change in how the program is working. So that's embedded in everything we do.
Okay, but to see it in writing would be helpful. Like,
absolutely,
it's
we
more
will
print. Like,
make that more clear.
Something, it say, hey, in 30 days, or I'm just giving you an example, we might have to revisit or retool this to let someone like myself who lives in these residents, these buildings, to know that that y'all will not, y'all anticipate in having to change things, to address them, because everything, it looks good. But in the old term of Murphy's Law, things, funding, as the chair is waiting for money, by the front door. Things can just, put things to the side, delay, or in some cases, just cancel some of the things that you're trying to propose. That could possibly happen. So I don't know if the time limit would be 30 days or 60 days, but these things have to be revisited or either put in the initial presentations that you have a proactive way of saying, hey, we will take another look at this in 2 weeks or whenever to see where we are, to see if anything has to be changed. If I can read that, I'm saying for myself, that lets me know, hey, okay, they're thinking that they do anticipate possibly if anything goes wrong or is delayed, they will be addressing it. You understand what I'm saying, Ms. Trimble?
Absolutely. It's an excellent suggestion for us to add into our presentations going forward. So thank you. And for example, in the janitorial reform, we did a survey of the residents in the pilot sites at the start of the reform, in the middle of the program, and as we're going towards the end now, to do, to get that feedback at different parts in the process so that we can make adjustments as we go. But we'll make that more clear in our presentations going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Eva, this is Paula Gavin. Thanks so
morning.
much for the update. We have not seen a recent quarterly report from the monitor. If I can remember, it seems like it's almost 6 months ago since we've seen one. And I really wanted to know if there are any areas of concern for the action plans with the monitor. Do we have anything that right now is considered in jeopardy from the monitor's point of view?
I'd rather not speak for the monitor if they think there are things in jeopardy. They did have a quarterly report. Their 9th quarterly report came out in the middle of October. I can forward that to you if you were not able to see it. It should be on their website as well, but I'm happy to forward that to you.
Yeah, the board had been getting them regularly, so I think that's good to share with the board.
Okay, I will send that on.
Okay, great, thanks. And I agree with you not speaking for them, but I just wanted to see what's in jeopardy from their point of view.
Sure.
Member Gewolf, do you have any questions or comments, or you're good?
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Hey,
Eva,
Jackie, I'm
yeah.
sorry.
Yes,
It's Greg. I just wanted to add a note that to the rest of the board. For many of the work order ticket issues, especially those related to mold, we are going to have to, I think, very shortly, likely in January or so, begin to press much harder than we have been in order to stay even. I'm very concerned about some of the work order areas that make more demanding and complex repairs difficult. We have our backlog, of course, which we're going to have to deal with. And I think that the reforms that Eva's presenting here, as they roll out over time, will help some of the things that the board members raised, especially Victor and Joe. But I'm not going to represent to the board that we're going to be carrying a large backlog into the new year, and we're going to have to deal with it. We've advised HUD of this, others. You'll see in the budget that we attempted to balance some of the efforts around this, but we will likely be back early in the year with some ideas for probably employing a combination of staff and likely vendors to begin to think about, can we pick off some of these backlogs, and we'll use the neighborhoods and maybe look at the neighborhoods that maybe have the highest number of a certain kind of work order. So we could just send one vendor into that neighborhood to do all of that work at one site. But there'll be more ideas coming, because one of the things that happens to us, I mean, this came out in the visit to Patterson. It's just, you've heard me say this a dozen times, but we have situations where we can repair an individual unit but we really can't guarantee that the unit's going to stay fixed. And that's because we can't repair entire lines of pipe or entire systems. And it quickly moves from being an individual repair into repairs that require capital. Now, the mold team, for example, is going to do a whole line replacement on one of the worst lines that we have, because the line itself is well past its useful life. So there's going to be more effort. And as we look at this going forward, our operating budget is going to have to sustain those efforts, because even if we got the capital tomorrow, we won't be in the ground with the capital for many, many months as we do the planning. And then we're likely to have 36-month construction schedules. So this is coming. And I just wanted to let the board know that some of those old tickets are probably going to get caught up, I hope, in a way to address. But we've been watching this, and we're not unmindful of the demand that is out there. I just wanted to share that.
Okay, Greg? Greg?
Yeah, sorry, Joe, I had to get off mute.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I had some brief experience with the mold, like for my bathroom, and the process. The first initial 3 steps of the process went just fine with the contract. The assessment came, answered questions. Then the second part was actual cleaning. The third part was where it got bumpy with the contractor, where they used the stuff to cover the surface did not hold up. And our people here had to make a follow-up appointment and come back to do a little cleaning, and they had to use another product on the wall. And the guy said the stuff that the contractor used was kind of, he was making a joke, but he would say it's kind of like the stuff we used to finger paint in school. It's not going to hold in the bathroom like that with hot water and steam and stuff. So that the first 3 steps, the first few steps, it was timely and was fine. It's just that the material that was used by this particular contractor just did not hold up. And that was the only glitch in it from my experience that I've had with it. That's it. Other than that, it was, timely response, timely questions, timely, but the actual material was just not up to par. That's it.
All right, thanks, Joe.
All right.
Okay, thank you so much, for the questions or comments. Thank you, Eva and Arvind. Next to move off, and Mariella, Steve, to answer your question, Mariella, well, it's up already. Thank you. Thank you, Mariella. Next, we'll proceed to Facade Safety Inspection Program presentation by Steve Lovesey, EVP for CPD. Steve?
Jacqueline, thank you very much.
Welcome.
Good afternoon. As Jacqueline said, my name is Stephen Lovesey. I'm the Executive Vice President of Capital Projects Division. Thank you for inviting me to provide an informational presentation on the City of New York Facade Safety Inspection Program that impacts NYCHA's portfolio. The next slide is the agenda. I'll quickly go over the FISP program, talk a little bit about the history and our Bond B program, the Department of Buildings regulations, current status, and then looking forward. So getting into the facade program in the next slide, what is the New York City Facade Inspection Safety Program? Well, it's a mandated code to inspect the facades of buildings over 6 stories in height every 5 years, and to identify unsafe conditions and to take care of those conditions. The law is also known as Local Law 11. The city is currently in cycle 9, which started in 2020, and each cycle is divided into subcycles. And so buildings across the city are assigned to those subcycles, which during that particular subcycle that building is identified at, it would need to be inspected a report filed with the Department of Buildings, and any unsafe conditions found to be addressed. For NYCHA, this is approximately 1,488 buildings. We are, by the way, the largest filer for Department of Buildings. In fact, NYCHA has its own pull-down bar on the DOB website when filing for Local Law 11 work. Why do I bring up the subcycles? Well, historically, subcycle schedules were very problematic for NYCHA because the way the Department of Buildings identifies buildings is by address and not by development. And so we would have a development that, let's say, has 14 buildings, and we would have buildings within that development that would fall in all of the different subcycles. We worked with the Department of Buildings, and this cycle, cycle 9, they've now linked all of the buildings per development in the same subcycle, which will help us with coordination, funding, as well as contractors doing the work at those developments. The next slide talks a little bit about the program. So we hire third-party engineers that are specifically certified to perform the facade analysis. They're referred to as quality exterior wall inspectors, or fondly QE inspectors. These inspectors do a visual inspection, and in starting in this cycle, cycle 9 in 2020, they now also conduct probes and other, what I'm going to refer to as destructive testing on the facades that we would then have to patch and repair. And I'll discuss that a little bit later. The QE files on our behalf a report to the Department of Buildings and identifies conditions across all of the facades. They are either safe, which means that we don't have to do any repairs. They're safe with a repair and maintenance program. These are conditions identified that need repairs, but are completely stable and safe to the public. Those will automatically move to be classified as unsafe if they haven't been taken care of in the next cycle. And then the unsafe conditions that require immediate attention. And the immediate attention is that when the report is filed, NYCHA has 24 hours to install a safety protection at those unsafe locations. This is a sidewalk shed or fencing. Next slide, please. Now, 24 hours is not a lot of time. In 24 hours, CPD defines the scope, the location of the protection, develops the task order, secures the funds, deploys the contractor, and the shedding has to be installed. This leaves really little time to engage our stakeholders, the development staff, and our residents. But over the past year, what we've been doing has been notifying the development around the same time period we're reaching out to that contract. I know it's not a lot of time, but it's better than historically the surprise of trucks showing up at a development and installing shedding around buildings. In addition, this year, CPD began posting signs in multiple languages that explain why shedding has been installed. And that's the sign in the middle. The Department of Buildings installs the sign on the right-hand side that identifies that the report was filed correctly. Now, the images on the left, the one in the lower left is, we've been working with MOCJ. This is at Ingersoll Houses to add additional lighting and mirrors around hidden corners and entrances while those sheds are up. After the shedding has been installed, CPD staff then go to the monitors in the management office. We identify cameras that are blocked and input work order tickets for those cameras to be adjusted. CPD also tracks blocked cameras and coordinates with Department of Safety and Security, who adjusts those cameras accordingly. If we move to the next slide, I'll tell a little bit about the recent history of the program. So in 2013, sidewalk sheds plagued New York City much like they do today. And to address the concerns of the residents with the little funds at that time period that we received from the Fed, state, and city, NYCHA participated in a bond program, and we raised capital funds to address facades and roofs, particularly masonry, windows, and the roofing. That time period as well, sidewalk shed was becoming a political issue. And that year, Mayor-elect Bill de Blasio campaigned on removing sidewalk sheds. And acting on a campaign promise, the mayor allocated around $355 million to NYCHA. And NYCHA was able to do about $52 million in facade repair before something called Directive 10 was issued by the comptroller that deemed this type of work not eligible for capital funds or bond funding. So the facade work was no longer able to be used, or city funds for bond funds weren't able to be used for this. And this meant that NYCHA couldn't use those funds for the local law repairs. The funds were moved by the Office of Management and Budget to the mayor's roofing program and became kind of the first tranche of the mayor's program. We'll say we've been working with the Department of Buildings and City Hall and our elected officials. And in 2021, under the leadership of Greg Russ, the city has invested about $111 million to address buildings which have had shedding up more than 5 years. We can go to the next slide. There's a nice diagram to illustrate kind of that 2013, we were at 121 linear feet of shedding. After Bond B, that work got us down to about 103,000 linear feet. That's, in essence, 18,000 linear feet less. That equals about 50 football fields of shedding that was taken down as part of the Bond B program. And today we are at, by the end of this year, we'll be at about 124,000 linear feet. As of our stats of today, we have 123,000 linear feet of sheds, around 59,000 linear feet of fencing. That's at 443 buildings have sheds, 243 have fencing at 115 developments. The next slide. So one other issue that came up was major changes in the Department of Buildings. And in 2020, the new rule implemented for cycle 9 was that it required the inspections to do more drops off the side of the building. So those are the manual lifts that staff go down the side of the building. They also required us to go into the cavity and look at the brick ties in those cavities. So that's removing brick, doing probes with inside, and then patching and repairing the brick. And this work has significantly impacted our budget. An example that we have at the bottom here is that when we solicited the third-party inspectors for cycle 9, the increased costs of the amount of work that they have to do didn't just double, it increased by 2,377% from our original budgets. And so, as you can tell, that drains into our overall budget. We're asked a lot about what is the cost of those inspections and what are the costs of the shedding. And the next slide shows you this. So currently we project around $54 million just in the cost of installing and maintaining sidewalk sheds and the cost of the inspections. And again, these are the costs to just keep us compliant with the local law 11 program. None of the funds here that you see are actually going to fix the brick, which would then allow us to remove the sheds. Once they're filed with the Department of Buildings, we are not allowed to remove those sheds until the brick has been taken care of. Next year, we project that number will go up to 86 million. The following year, 2023, will hover at about 87 million, and then projected in 2024, $90 million. The next slide, please. Our funding today As I mentioned, we're receiving 111 million to address shedding that is installed over 5 years. In the overall 5-year capital plan, we allocate around $256 million towards compliance as a part of Local Law 11. We received an emergency grant of 40 million from HUD this year. And there's some other funds. We have a handful of state SAM grants that equal up 4.5 million and about 21 million for our mixed funding sites, mixed finance sites. We're not allowed to use the federal dollars too. That puts us at a total of around $433 million of funding for the next 5 years towards compliance. What we estimate the cost of the program is about 883 million in FY22 and 23, and then an additional 400 million each year after that to be in compliant with the code, as well as fix the issues, the underlying issues. If we look at the compliance of cycle 9, that's the current cycle that we're on, that goes through 2025. It's estimated for the required reports, the required shedding, the work of that to remove those sheds is about $1.6 billion. And if we look at cycle 9 and 10 together, as we look out at 10-year plans, it's estimated at about 3.7 billion. One silver lining is cycle 10 has less requirements as cycle 9 does. Cycle 9 has all of the probes and cycle 10 does not. So our funding for cycle 10 will go down. The next slide, please. So the problem that we face is that even if we had the 3.7 billion to spend on Local Law 11, it only addresses the unsafe condition outlined in the reports filed by the Department of Buildings. It does not solve additional deterioration that happens in the facade. So if an unsafe condition is at this spot on a building, the brick that's 6 feet away is also the same age. The mortar is the same age, and the deterioration is continuing to happen. And so you're able to take down sheds one cycle. You're immediately required to do an analysis on the next cycle, and you end up having to put up sheds, and it's a kind of a vicious circle. So it only addresses the unsafe condition. It doesn't solve the additional deterioration of the facade. It doesn't solve the water and air infiltration on that old masonry, and it does not change the composition of the exterior facade, reducing heating and cooling and needs. In short, it's not holistic and it doesn't take building science into account. So moving to the next slide, a little bit of what we want to do in the future is that we're investigating and piloting projects that go beyond Local Law 11 mandate to holistically address the facade issues and the unsafe conditions. And these include repointing of the entire facade, not just the individual sections that are identified as unsafe. So that way we can move past the cycles. Repointing, by the way, does make the work capital eligible. Replacing exterior brick that no longer shields the building from water. The building science of a brick is that as it is heated, the one facade, the outside facade of the brick is fired at a higher temperature. And so it is a harder material, but over time that disintegrates and then allows for water and air moisture and air to go through the brick. One can remove all of that brick, put in a new cavity with insulation and install new bricking over it. The lower left-hand corner is an EFIS program. This is exterior insulation finishing system that is put on. This provides additional R value or heating and cooling for the building and lowers your energy costs. And the last item is recladding. So where are we doing some of these? Right now in our capital plan, we're doing a mineral coating at Jamaica Houses in FY 22 and 23. This mineral coating is providing a breathable coating that will prevent moisture vapor getting in through the facade of the building. We're looking at EFIS at Saratoga Village as part of the design build heating plant program there. And we're doing a recladding at Ravenswood in fiscal year FY 22 and 24. And that concludes my presentation on the Local Law 11 program. I'm happy to answer any questions that the board members might have.
Hi, Steve. Hello.
Yes, Board Member Adams.
Okay. I know for a fact that the things that come from the size of the buildings is a hard issue and has to be addressed. But you came here to our residents. These sheds, I understand that, you know, there's money and protocol, and you explained it to me so diligently. But you can't, okay, let's just go back to public school when we had fire drills. The basic fundamental fire drill is to come out of a building and to do what, Steve? Move away from the building. Here, what you saw, but you did have some lights put in the back part. I'm gonna talk about that in 1 second, but there's no exits. There's nothing cut open so the ambulances and fire people or residents in wheelchairs can be pushed out into the street away from the danger. There's nothing cut. I believe Vilma did when they first came here, when we saw people, had somebody cut a big entrance, but you know, the people in the neighborhood, they were parked there and stuff, but there's nothing to get from out of the building and directly into the street away from the danger. You saw the back. In the back by the community center there, the fire exit is not blocked, but the fencing is completely blocking off the other side where there's another building that I think it's a private residence where people have social events. I'm sure if somebody elderly was to come out and was in danger, they could come over the fence along with a fireman or someone to get them to help them get over there. That is completely blocked. This is a dangerous situation. There's nothing. I literally, when I came out last winter, I literally had to walk a half a block to get my ride. And there was snow there and I slipped. I didn't get hurt. I have a lot of cushion, so that was not a problem. And but the thing is, you were here, you saw this. I understand these sheds need to be there, and then they're not maintained. There are gaps in them. There are critters up there, you know, having social events. But I'm saying, but the danger part that we're blocked in. We can't, if you go across the street at Trinity School with young people, but when they come out of the building, before they even have to walk to the end of the block, they can at least come between the cars and get away from the immediate danger. People cannot even do that here. In a smoke situation, people can't think. Now, you were nice enough to get those extra signs put up, but if smoke is coming through there, people panic. We're completely blocked off by the sheds. There's no opening nowhere for a whole, and now since Wise is doing some work, you literally almost have to go a block and a half, except for one space, to get out from the danger. You're supposed to be able to come out and move across the street away from the danger. That cannot be accomplished here. And I saw something at Wilson in another place too, where it's like that. It's just unthinkable to, you know, as a board member to sit here to support this. But this is important, what you're trying to do here. But you have to at least cut a hole or do something and maintain these sheds so they can do what you need them to do, is to catch stuff as you're working and what's going on. But the danger of trying to come out to get away, people can't get ride service. The fire department had to come here one day and they broke through some of the piping. Ambulances have to park at the corner and come up the hill to get people who are occasionally not feeling well here. We have no way to get out and go away from the danger here. And we're not the only building like that. They are important though, because you don't want stuff falling on people. I've seen some of the guys sometimes take some of the stuff down that have fallen, and it's dangerous. But then again, you can't block people in the back and the front. There's no way in an emergency with, like I said, smoke and things, and you're older or younger, or you just panic. You have to come out and get away, just like we used to do in the old fire drill, Steve. And we can't do that here. We cannot cross the street.
So thank you very much.
And not only
Member
here, no,
Adam.
there's other developments. I have a list I can send you, but I'm not gonna get into that. I'm just, because you came here and you saw this and you explained this so, so with the protocol and with the money and the controller's office and who, I understand that, but we have to eliminate the danger of what we need to do, what you need to do. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
We can't get out.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. So you've brought up a couple of things, and I just want to address a couple of, I'll address all of those. The first one is, yes, you invited me up to that development. We looked at it. When the shedding was first put up, what happens is at the edge, so for everyone else that's listening, at the edge of the curb, there is the vertical supports and there are these horizontal crossbars. Usually an opening happens directly in front of an entrance, but that might not be the way in which the residents of that building use the facility. And so we come back and we, I think, removed a few more of the cross bracings, as many as we could, where it doesn't, obviously, the cross bracing is there for the structure of the sidewalk sheds. And so there was a couple of moved out. So as you leave a building, you go to the right or the left of your building, much like many that are on the street wall. And that's how you exit a building, and you go down the sidewalk rather than exit the building and go to the street. And then, as you mentioned, we opened up those handful of places, but there's parked cars there and they don't necessarily comply with where shedding is. They're just parking their car. And so that creates an issue when you have to try to exit a sidewalk and get between cars as well as the sheds. And we recognize that that's difficult, and where we have a possibility of removing those crossbars, we do. In the case of the back area, we did add additional signs, as you mentioned. There's an exit, you exit out of the back into a plaza area, and then you turn to the right and go down a corridor to get to the street. That's the egress and occupancy of your building. And we put up those extra signs because we felt, just like you said, I agreed with you completely, and the tenant association leader, that residents who may come into that plaza may not really recognize where they need to go to get out. I actually think it doesn't matter if they're shedding or not. We should probably keep those signs up because it's a good way of moving somebody out through those spaces. In regards to the overall safety concern of the shedding, I agree completely. I've spoken to many council members. We're working with Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice. Sheds across the city are an issue, not just at NYCHA, but obviously with our funding issues associated to shedding, they're going up, and they're going up every day as part of the cycles that we're required to put them up. We do work with the fire department and local ambulance when we put up shedding. They all review our plans to make sure that there is a way to get emergency vehicles up to the buildings, and we can share those site safety plans with, I think we share them with the development and the tenant associations, but we'll make sure that we do. But I recognize that it does change the way we do fire and emergency vehicles. For example, on Ingersoll, they used to be able to come in at any direction. Now they only have one or two directions to get into the center of campus. And they know that, but again, not all the time, because I have heard stories in which an ambulance may drive around a block 2 or 3 times before they can get to the entrance to get into the center of the campuses. And we'll continue to work with the fire department and emergency vehicle services to make sure that those sheds don't block access to the residents. But thank you very much for your comments.
Yes, Steve, everything that you said, what I'm saying is, if a hole can be cut at the entrance when you come out, what you're talking about is 30 feet away to the left and about another almost half a block to the end of the block to get away from danger. If someone comes out the building, at least somebody might pull a resident over top of a car or get to them. There's nothing directly in the entrance of here and other places where you can just get out. Maybe the fire department or someone can help an elderly resident or help them over the top of a car or whatever, because you panic. And the lights that you put up gave more visual. But if smoke comes down that corridor, you're cut off. You won't see lights, you won't see anything. At least if there was a hole in that fence, the people that live in the private residence can provide some help to people that might be trapped. But I'm just saying, I understand the dynamics of what you explained, and I agree with you. But the thing is, we can't get to where people can help us. I know you can't remove the bars. You have to make some sort of hole so people can get to us and other residents to get out. And coming through that corridor in the back, if smoke comes through there, it's a wrap. You won't be able to see the signs. You're going to panic, whether you can see, whether you can walk or not. And if anybody has any challenges, it's just going to be a wrap. And I'll have more to say because you were here and you saw that. And I still have the pictures, and I'll send them to you again. And anybody else that wants.
How about we can walk through it again, and if there's a door that we can put in that fence, we'll try. Again, the fence and the sheds are dictated by the Department of Buildings. They're not dictated by NYCHA. And so that's where they're required to be, but we can work to put in gates and or doors. So that way it makes it easier for the residents. Board Member Gonzalez, I think you had a question.
Yes, I did. I'm waiting for Mr. Adams to, Board Member Adams.
I'm finished, Victor. You look over here, you see, I think you see the areas I'm talking about. Yeah, I'm done.
Okay, so first of all, I think the local law 11, and when you were showing the signs where it says unsafe, and they give us a ludicrous amount of time to 90 days to fix something in an entire building, knowing the situation, I don't think it's enough time. And then that's my opinion. Now, with those sheds being up and either us not having the funding to begin or finish the work, and the sheds being up more than a length of time. Now, you showed some numbers as far as the cost. Do we get cited for having those sheds on for more than 90 days? And if so, is that amount of money that we're being cited to pay the city part of the numbers that you were describing earlier?
Councilmember Gonzalez, thank you very much for asking that question. It's a great question in regards to the 90 days. So that is part of the code, that the unsafe condition has to be fixed in 90 days. There is also a portion in that code that says that you can extend those 90 days if through the approval of the Department of Buildings. So Capital Projects Division has a regularly scheduled meeting only on local law 11 work, where we work with the Department of Buildings. We show them the projects that we're doing, the schedules, we basically go through our entire portfolio with them regularly. And that allows us to pass the 90 days because we are working with the Department of Buildings. They know all of our funding. We do open book with them. So they recognize the issue that we have where we don't have the money to fix those brickwork. And unfortunately, to keep the public safe and to comply with the law, we have to keep the shedding up. but we don't get cited from the Department of Buildings associated to fixing it in 90 days.
Okay.
And we
that was-
don't pay the Department of Buildings any fines or any funds associated to that.
That was my concern, because that could also add to the loss of revenue. So, okay. All right, that's my biggest issue there. So, and you were working on, I think from our last conversation, you were saying that the Department of Buildings and NYCHA are working it out even at a closer proximity as opposed to before, so that we have a good working relationship. Am I correct in that assumption?
Yes, the Department of Buildings has been very, very good to the Housing Authority. We have a very good working relationship with their staff. They're available all the time for meetings. And so I will give the example of the Cycle 9. It was not working for us in the fact that we were having, say, think of Queensbridge, and you have 3 buildings in Cycle A and 2 buildings in Cycle B, to coordinate all of that, to get the contractors there to do all of the work and not pay for somebody to remobilize all the time. It was costing the agency more money. They completely recognized that and modified it in Cycle 9 and then moving forward. In addition to that, the Department of Buildings worked with us on fencing. You'll notice that there's less shedding going up, which costs us a lot more, and more fencing that's going up. Fencing
Okay.
does cause other issues, but
Mm.
it allows for a lot more transparency, and it lowers our overall costs, so we can put less money into the shedding and more money into the facades and actually doing the work. And we worked out a deal with the Department of Buildings to make sure that the public was safe, but we could do less shedding and more fencing. Again, not the best solution, but a solution that's solving some of the issues that we have right now.
And one thing that brought something to my mind when we were talking about the shedding and you were trying to respond to Board Member Adams' inquiry. So the shedding is put up by the city, or is it put up by NYCHA due to the mandate that the city has about an unsafe situation?
So thank you for that question. The reporting is paid for by NYCHA. It's our
Right.
responsibility. And then when the report is filed with the Department of Buildings and there is an unsafe condition within that report, it is the requirements of NYCHA. So it's our contractors that we hire to put up that shedding or that sidewalks. Or that fencing. And we have about 7 general contractors in our portfolio of IDIQs that do shedding and fencing for us, as well as local law 11 work.
So then we have a little say as to how the shedding is constructed,
Well,
a little.
so the shedding is actually dictated. The color green, the style, all of those things are dictated by the Department of Buildings. The
Right.
location of those is dictated by the Department of Buildings as
Right.
well. It has to do, it's a calculation based on the height of the building, where that item is within that height, and then projection out what their calculation is that item could fall. And that puts the shedding, that puts the safe zone. We file all those with the Department of Buildings, and the Department of Buildings approves those drawings for us to move forward.
And that
The-
also goes
And that's
to
why
the
there's some,
piping?
yes, and that, well, the piping is general, right? There's a structural engineer that's identifying how many cross braces there needs to be, where not. But we can move those around.
Okay,
We can put
okay.
one cross bracing in one area. It's a very kit of parts, as you know, looking at these. There are about 2 or 3 options out there. We use the standard option. I know that there are some really beautiful sidewalk sheds. I think it's more lipstick on a pig, but there are beautiful sidewalk sheds out there throughout the city of New York.
Absolutely.
That wouldn't be, we just don't have the funds to do that type of work.
Yeah, no.
Now, to answer your one question, I go out and meet with residents and community leaders as we're looking at shedding and making modifications and changes. And we do find ourselves in some odd predicaments where we have to shed off just because of the way the line is drawn by the Department of Buildings as it relates to the formula. All of a sudden a bench is fenced off. And we've worked to try to figure out how we can, go back and make those modifications. And then also all of a sudden you'll be walking down a street and there will be 6 feet of shedding in the middle of nowhere. Well, the 6 feet of shedding is based on if you did a projection right to the building line and then up wherever that was, and that's what dictated that area of shedding. We won't build shedding out the whole street if we don't have to, only at that unsafe condition. And so that's why sometimes you look at the shedding and you just scratch your head. Why is this here? It's all dictated on the report of the facade and where that unsafe condition is in that overall facade.
Yeah, normal people that don't know the actual verbiage or language, we call it the bounce off the building effect. In other words, if something falls from there and hits the side of the building or hits an air conditioner, it bounces out further than if it just went straight down. And that's where I could see where you might put a shed a little further away and everybody's looking at you like you have two heads, not figuring that particular effect where that damage can occur.
Thank you, Board Member Gonzalez. I see Board Member Gavin has her hand up.
Okay, I'm good.
Member Gavin?
There we go.
Mm.
Thank you both, Joe and Victor. Those were amazing questions, and Steve, an amazing presentation. I just was wondering, is the 3.7 billion in the 40 billion that we speak about?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yeah, sorry. We talk about the $40 billion of needs that we have. And I just wanted to confirm that the 3.7 billion that you talked about for facade is included in that estimate.
So parts are obviously, that's the 2017 number that we look at over a period of time. The QE reports, these individuals are actually hanging off the side of the building and doing the analysis of the facades. And so those numbers, these are the numbers that are happening in real time at those developments from that time of that P&A all the way through. Greg has his hand up. Greg has spearheaded Capital Projects Division to look at the new P&A to be much more beyond replacement in kind and beyond that, bringing it up to a good state of repair and where do we want to be in the future. And so we're building those items out into the P&A. So this next round of physical needs assessment will be an even better tool than the one that we have today to think about where we want to be as an agency. So that way we can use our money and be better stewards for that money. Greg, your hand is up.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Steve. Paula, Steve's answer on parts of it being there are correct, but it's not all there. When we did the P&A, it is a fix as is approach. So if we knew we had a facade that needed to be repointed, that money would be captured in the P&A and go into the 40 billion. But I think one of the things that Steve's report highlights is this does not include recladding a building. It does not include some of the more massive capital repairs that we would have to do to take care of both the brickwork, but also reap benefits on the energy side. So if we think about the 40 billion, I think about it as we can stabilize the units, take care of a number of systemic things, but we're not going to be representing to everybody that we're fully recladding buildings, because that number's not in there, that we're going to be doing tremendous carbon reductions, because again, only pieces of the energy work are in there as well. And that's why it's important to recognize that the $40 billion number is a great number, but it represents a certain view of the building. Eventually, I think as a housing authority, we'll have to decide if we're going to supplement whatever money we get from Washington, and have to decide if we're going to bring more money to these buildings to do things like the resiliency work, more energy improvements, deeper ones, and also, electrification. Those are the kinds of things that when the P&A was done first time weren't, they weren't included that way. And what I've asked capital to do is, honor the HUD approach, but give us a number that takes a more comprehensive look at the repairs the building needs, if that's helpful.
Yeah, that is very helpful, because as we think about people talking about the 40 billion, it is not enough.
Yes, that's correct. Well, actually, it's interesting you say that, because I got my first flyer from a group saying just that we refuse to accept the Build Back Better. But my feeling is that, look, if we can get a substantial grant from the Build Back Better, hallelujah. Because then in the delta between what that represents and what we have to do if we want to push the buildings farther into the future with these kinds of improvements, it's smaller. So
Correct,
I think it winds up, if Washington, whatever number gets out of the Senate, it seeds the grant seeds the property, and we can look to raise more on top of that if we want to push the property farther with improvements. But you're right, it's not it's not as comprehensive as we're thinking now, in part because we've changed our approach to energy, green. I think IDA was particularly sobering in terms of keeping equipment out of the way of stormwater drainage. So those things aren't fully captured. But we could raise the money to put them in place.
Thanks. That's very helpful. And Steve, again, it's a very comprehensive report. And I think what Victor and Joseph were talking about on safety is also critical. But I think as we all understand the needs, it is greater than 40 billion. And I think it's good for us to recognize that.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Greg, and thank you, Paula. And I think I called you council member, Paula, so maybe that's foreshadowing something. I'm not sure.
Member Gonzalez, looked like you had another question.
No, Stephen answered
Okay.
the issue I had. I just was commenting on what Board Member Gavin had said, and I said absolutely.
Okay, terrific.
Steve and Greg, hello?
Member
Hello?
Adam?
Yeah.
Joe.
Great.
Yeah.
Can we take a page out of Reed's playbook? They partner with the Robin Hood Foundation and various people for the goals that they do there. I mean, I believe we have access of some sort of interaction with the school construction authority, and beside the building, just somebody to cut holes, make exits so people can get out until all these other things, the money for to do whatever else has to be do with these sheds. We just need to get out in case of an emergency. They are blocked.
Well,
That's it. I know we don't want things bouncing off.
No,
people's heads.
I understand.
We have to get out the building. This is just goes back to when me and you were in grade school and they used to make us cross the street. And I don't know about you, but I went back to class. But anyway, we have to make exits to get out.
Let's have somebody look at the shed because I think
Steve
it's
was up there.
no,
Steve
I
was up
know
there.
Steve was up here, but the issue you're raising, I'd like to see if it's resolvable because maybe we can brace a section differently or something, but we could come back and then give instructions to the contractor if it's doable.
We just wanted, they wanted
Yep.
the people to get out, and the back entrance is completely accessible to get out in a clear, concise day. If smoke comes up that other side, it's all over. It's over. There's nothing for nobody to climb over to get out no other way. There's just not. And Steve has seen it. And I believe I did send you pictures a while back, but he's seen it. And that's all I have to say about it. But thank you, though, for the presentation, Steve. That's it.
Board Member Adams will come back up to the development. We'll make sure that that condition is resolved.
Okay, terrific. Thank you so much, Steve. That concludes our second presentation.
Thanks.
Chair, being that all matters before the board today have been addressed, may I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
Pardon me, I do have a statement I would like to, or a suggestion I would like to make to the chair.
Yes,
Sure.
sir.
Greg, being that we have a new chief of security and safety, the other guy had plans, and this new one has plans as well. And I figured as a board, I mean, Kool and the Gang had an old song said, different strokes for different folks. And I would like to get Chief Secreto, or excuse me, James Secreto's idea of what plans he wants to implement for the safety and the security of the residents of NYCHA. Maybe for the next non-voting.
Yeah, no, I talked to Jimmy about it, and I wanted to give him time to get out into the
Okay.
field, and he has dealt with a number of things that come his way, but we are planning on having him make come to the board, do some kind of presentation. And I think if we did it for the first non-voting, we would also know what the city's interested in and whether there's any synergy there with the new administration.
Yes, yes.
You know, we've had one transition meeting. They asked for some ideas. We have a package of security ideas that we can share, eventually share, but we'll get him on the calendar either for a report at a voting meeting or depending on the timing, we could do the non-vote so that you can have a chance to talk with him. And but we did want to give him some time, since I think it's only been about 2 months for him to see what we're dealing with.
Okay, sounds good.
Is that a
Yes,
fair
that's it.
summary, James?
Yes, yes, and thank you, Victor, for bringing that up. I am working at the chair's direction and the COO's direction on a safety and security plan, and I hope to do a presentation coming forward as as we go forward.
It's good to have you aboard.
Yeah, I
No,
agree.
Thank you, thank you.
Yes, it is. I feel much better already.
No, and I thank you. I thank you. And I won't disappoint. I won't disappoint you, Victor. I
Thank
won't.
you. Thank you.
Mr.
Thank you,
Safety, Mr. Safety Director, do you happen to have a pair of fence cutters? I'm just asking. I'm just asking.
Hey, listen, I heard you loud and clear.
Yeah,
Okay.
Joe, we can't do any breaking and entering, so.
No, we just want to get out.
No, I understand. Let's
We're not
look at
breaking
it. All
in
right,
anybody's apartment.
we'll
Yeah,
get
we're
the,
not breaking in anything. We just want to get out.
you're breaking out, so, okay.
Yeah, that's it.
All right.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Now that concludes the meeting. May I have a motion to adjourn this meeting? I believe Paula made the motion
I'll second it.
and seconded by Vice Chair. All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed. The recorded end time is 12:19. Thank you all. The next NYCHA board meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, December 29th at 10 a.m. Stay safe and happy holidays to all.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
too, as
Happy
well.
holidays.
Holidays to everyone.
Happy holidays.